Welcome to the FERPA and Red Flags Rule informational presentation for students at Madison Area Technical College. We will provide detailed information regarding your rights under FERPA, as well as how we work to keep your information secure. Part 1, FERPA. FERPA stands for the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act of 1974. It is also referred to as the Buckley Amendment. This federal law is designed to protect the confidentiality of a student's educational records. FERPA governs the release of student educational records by the college as well as access to these records. Institutions may not disclose information from student educational records without a student's written consent, with a few exceptions noted later in this tutorial. This act is enforced by the Family Policy Compliance Office of the U.S. Department of Education. Who is covered under FERPA? Students who are or have been in attendance at the college are covered under FERPA. FERPA rights begin once a student applies to a program or a Madison College student account is created. This applies regardless of the student's age or intent to enroll. Once you are a Madison College student, FERPA guidelines provide you with the following rights: to inspect and review your education records, to request to amend your education records to ensure accuracy, to have control over the disclosure of personally identifiable information from your education records, to file a complaint with the U.S. Department of Education if you believe Madison College has failed to comply with FERPA requirements. Complaints can be sent to Family Policy Compliance Office, U.S. Department of Education, 400 Maryland Avenue Southwest, Washington, D.C. 20202-4605. FERPA defines education records as all records that contain information directly related to the student, are maintained by an educational agency or institution or by a party acting on behalf of the agency or institution, and can exist in any medium including printed, handwritten, computer-generated, videotape, film, microfilm, email, and any other form of electronic storage. Exceptions to education records include sole possession records, personal notes kept by faculty staff if kept in the sole possession of one who made the record and never revealed to another individual, employment records of those whose employment record is not contingent upon being a student, law enforcement records maintained by law enforcement unit of the college that were created by the law enforcement unit for the purposes of law enforcement only, doctor-patient privilege records, alumni records or those that only contain non-standard data collected about students who no longer attend. The data has been collected after the last attendance or graduation. Some examples of what is considered education records are student schedules, degree audits, class assignments, class rosters, grade rosters, grades, transcripts, student information displayed on a computer screen, any printed material with a student ID on it, or other personally identifiable information. FERPA states that access to information should be limited to individuals who are school officials with a legitimate educational interest in the specific information being accessed. Who is considered a school official? A person employed by the institution in an administrative, supervisory, academic or research, or support staff position. A person serving on an institutional governing body. A person employed by or under contract to the institution to perform a special task, such as an attorney or auditor, a person or organization acting as an official agent of the institution and performing a common business function or service on behalf of the institution, or a student serving on a committee. FERPA requires that Madison College obtain a student's written consent prior to disclosing any other personally identifiable information contained in education records except to school officials with legitimate educational interests or other authorized representatives under FERPA. The student must provide signed and dated written consent in person with photo ID before disclosure. The consent must specify records to be disclosed, state purpose of disclosure, and identify party or a class of parties to whom disclosure may be made. Madison College has a document titled Consent for Release of Student Information. This form can be found on the Madison College website by searching for FERPA Release. Madison College also has a document titled Authorization to Disclose Academic Information and Grades. This is available to you via Blackboard. Non-directory information is not released to anyone other than the student except for the following agencies which can receive this data without the student's permission as provided by the Privacy Act. School officials with legitimate educational interests, federal, state, and local authorities involving an audit or evaluation of compliance with education programs, agencies with a collaborative agreement and contract with Madison College to provide student services such as WorkSmart, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, and the Veterans Administration, properly authorized educational authorities for the purpose of research, provided that the information is not given in personally identifiable format, accrediting organizations carrying out their accrediting functions, courts or legal officers on the basis of a subpoena in connection with a health or safety emergency if necessary to protect the student or others, the Wisconsin Technical College Board as part of the process of securing state funds, military recruiters as required under the Solomon Amendment of 1998, state and local officials to whom disclosures are required by the state statute adopted prior to November 19, 1974. FERPA allows the general public to access directory information. The public may obtain non-directory information by obtaining a signed consent from the student. The college is required to comply with the Wisconsin Open Records Law and request for information submitted under this law. What is restricted or protected under FERPA? Access to student records. At the post-secondary level, the public has no inherent rights to access or inspect a student's education records. This right is limited solely to the student. Grades, progress report, exams, such things as course progress, deficiencies in a subject area, scores, and grades are all examples of personally identifiable information that make up a student's education record. This information is protected under FERPA, and parents may not have access unless the student has provided prior written consent identifying what information may be released. Directory information is information which would not generally be considered harmful or an invasion of privacy if disclosed. A policy for identifying directory information or having no directory information at all must be determined and adhered to by institutions. Students have the right to restrict the disclosure of this information. The following information has been identified as directory information, and some or all of it may be made public if the student has not requested that it be withheld. Name, major field of study, program, participation in officially recognized activities and sports, weight and height of members of the athletic teams, dates of attendance, term start, end dates, not specific dates, enrollment status, full or part-time, degrees and awards received, Madison College email address. A student has the right to request that all directory information not be disclosed. To withhold all directory information, you may adjust your privacy settings in your My Madison College Classic portal under Personal Information. Or you may complete a request to withhold student information form and submit it with photo ID to Enrollment Services, Truax Campus, Madison College, 1701 Wright Street, Madison, Wisconsin 53704. Upon submitting the request, all future requests for service must be made in person with photo ID or accessed online by signing on to your My Madison College account. This includes, but is not limited to, class registration, class schedules, transcript requests, financial aid inquiries, and account inquiries. A student may submit a written request identifying the records he or she wishes to inspect. Requests to review education records must be made in writing to Enrollment Services. Enrollment Services may take up to 45 days to honor the request. If photocopies of records are requested, fees for copies are the same rate charged by the college library. Should a student find a part of his or her education records misleading or inaccurate, they may submit a written request to Enrollment Services clearly identifying the part of the record that is to be changed and specifying the reason it is inaccurate or misleading. If the decision is not to amend the record as requested, the student will be notified and advised as to his or her right to a hearing as well as hearing procedures. FERPA information is also available on our website under Protection of Student Records as well as Access to Student Records. You can contact Enrollment Services using our Ask Madison College tool or by phone at 608-246-6210 or by visiting the Truax campus, room A1000. Federal resources for more information can be found on the Family Policy Compliance Office website. you can contact this office at 400 Maryland Avenue, Southwest, Washington, D.C., 20202-8520. Next, we will discuss the red flags rule. Signed into law in 2003, the Red Flags Rule, or RFR, is a component of the Federal Trade Commission's Fair and Accurate Credit Transactions Act. Section 114 of the Act requires the college to have an identity theft prevention program designed to detect, prevent, and mitigate identity theft in connection with opening an account or an existing account. The Red Flags Rule allows the college to detect and respond to any red flags to prevent and mitigate identity theft. Red flags are patterns, practices, or activities that indicate the possibility of identity theft. Identity theft is a fraud committed or attempted using another person's identifying information without authority. Two types of accounts require compliance: covered accounts and service provider accounts. Even though the college is not a financial institution, compliance is required. Covered accounts are established with the college to obtain services or products for personal purposes. They include federal and emergency loans and loan refunds, direct deposit information, 1098-T information and Wisconsin tax refund intercept program accounts, delinquent accounts sent to collection agencies, contracted agreements including third-party arrangements, active one-card debit accounts. Service provider accounts are established between the college and another business to provide the college with a service, such as online payments and collection recovery. Each institution is responsible for determining and implementing their own unique RFR program. The program will be updated whenever significant changes in business processes occur, as new processes require new techniques to monitor for fraud. Compliance is attained through a four-step process: identifying red flags, detecting red flags, prevention and mitigation of identity theft, and annual review and updates. Notifications and warnings from credit reporting agencies help us identify red flags. These include, but are not limited to, report of fraud accompanying a credit report, notice of report from a credit agency of a credit freeze on an applicant, notice or report from a credit agency of an active duty alert for an applicant, receipt of a notice of address discrepancy in response to a credit report request, indication from a credit report of activity that is inconsistent with an applicant's usual pattern or activity. Suspicious documents are also red flags. These may include identification document or card that appears to be forged, altered, or inauthentic. The photograph or physical description on the identification is not consistent with the appearance of the student presenting the identification. A request for service that appears to have been altered or forged. A request made from a non-college issued email account, and a request to mail something to an address not listed on the file. Red flags are also raised from suspicious identifying information. This is information presented to staff which is inconsistent with other information the student provides, for example, inconsistent birth dates, inconsistent with other sources of information, for example, address mismatch on personal documents. The same information shown on other applications that were found to be fraudulent, consistent with fraudulent activity, for example, invalid phone number or fictitious billing address, a social security number that is the same as one given by another person, or identifying information is not consistent with the information that is on file for the student. We may notice suspicious account activity such as account used in a way that is not consistent with prior use, mail sent to the student is repeatedly returned as undeliverable, notice to the college that a student is not receiving mail sent by the college, notice to the college that an account has unauthorized activity, breach in the college's computer security system, unauthorized access to or use of student account information. The college may also receive notice from a student, identity theft victim, law enforcement, or other person that the college has opened or is maintaining a fraudulent account for a person engaged in identity theft. In order to detect red flags associated with student enrollment, staff are expected to take the following steps to obtain and verify the identity of the person opening the account. Require certain identifying information such as student ID or social security number, name, date of birth, academic records, home address, or other identification, and verify the student's identity at time of issuance of student identification card, review government-issued photo identification or other personally identifiable information. In order to detect red flags for an existing covered account, staff should take the following steps to monitor transactions on an account. Verify the identification of students if they request information and/or services, in person with required form of photo ID, or via telephone, facsimile, or email with student ID or social security number, current mailing address, and phone number. Verify the validity of requests to change billing addresses by mail or email and provide the student a reasonable means of promptly reporting incorrect billing address changes, and verify changes in banking information given for billing and payment purposes. When a red flag is triggered, the college will take one or more of the following steps to prevent and mitigate any threat, depending on the degree of risk posed by the red flag. Continue to monitor a covered account for evidence of identity theft. Contact the student or applicant. Change any passwords or other security devices that permit access to covered accounts. Not open a new covered account. Notify the program administrator for determination of the appropriate steps to take. Notify law enforcement. Determine that no response is warranted under the particular circumstances. Communicate ability to provide FERPA block on directory information. In order to further prevent the likelihood of identity theft, the college will take the following steps to protect student identifying information. Ensure that its website is secure or provide clear notice that the website is not secure. Ensure complete and secure destruction of paper documents and computer files containing student account information when a decision has been made to no longer maintain such information. Ensure that office computers with access to covered student information are password protected, and provide automatic lockout for computers. Avoid use of social security numbers. Ensure computer virus protection is up to date. Require and keep only the kinds of student information that are necessary for college purposes. Should a student become aware of a potential incident of identity theft, they are expected to notify the college from their Madison College student email account by sending all pertinent information to enrollmentservices@madisoncollege.edu. On an annual basis, the college's program will be reviewed and potentially revised as methods of identity theft are constantly evolving. Additional information is available on our website under Protection of Student Records as well as Student Records. You can contact Enrollment Services using our Ask Madison College tool by phone at 608-246-6210 or by visiting the Truax campus room A1000. Federal resources on identity theft prevention can be found at www.consumer.ftc.gov/topics/identity-theft. Thank you for taking the time to learn about FERPA and red flags rules.